Hi there, Smart Drivers. Rick with Smart Drive Test talking to you today about COVID-19, the DMVs, and the reopening post-COVID-19. We're not really post-COVID-19 yet. They are talking about a second wave, but what some of the DMVs are doing in the United States and in Canada, and we'll talk about that and give you some information so you can get a road test, a driver's test, and pass it first time. Stick around. We'll be right back with that information. Hi there, Smart Drivers. Rick with Smart Drive Test. COVID-19. Jonathan is here, and we have a few other people here as well on the live stream here. Updates about the DMV. A lot of questions about what's going on with the reopenings, whether they're doing a modified test with the driving examiner outside of the vehicle. If the DMVs are open at all, there's still a lot of states that are closed down. California, for example, is still closed, which is the most populated state in the U.S. So Katie's here, Carrie's here, Joe, hello everybody, and if you're just tuning in, let us know where you are in the world. If you're in the United States, let us know where you are, what state you're in, what county you're in, because it's also going to vary from county to county. Carrie was giving me, I was getting information about some of the DMVs in different states, and it seems that they're running on reduced personnel as well, which is causing difficulties for people getting road tests. You know, even though the DMV center is open and people are trying to call in to book a driver's test, it's still difficult for them to get through to communicate with government personnel to get a driver's test. They don't know whether it's a modified driver's test. They don't know what is expected. And the other thing is that they're talking about the modified driver's test. Some of the information that I got about the driver's test was that there wasn't going to be parallel parking, and I've had stories from students who have done the driver's test, and yes, they had to parallel park between two cones. So know that as well and be prepared for that. And fungi, I don't know whether I'm saying that right, Harris County in Texas, and the information we have about the state of Texas is that the private driving schools administer the driving test there, and then you have to apply to the DMV in Texas to actually get your license. So I'm not exactly sure how that works, but the results are sent into the DMV, and the DMV administers your road test, or your driver's license rather, based on the test that you took at the local driving school. And this is something that I'm thinking that once they start working through the backlog of the number of driver's tests that they have, this is what's going to happen. They're going to have to bring on the local driving schools, whether that is to get them to do tests, actual administered tests, or whether they're going to, provide some oversight if they're going to move people from the learner's phase into the novice phase, which is what they're doing in the state of Wisconsin. And at this juncture, Wisconsin is the only state that has done that. Georgia tried to do it, and then they repealed that, or rescinded it, and now they're doing a modified test there. DL, my understanding is that in Texas, the DMVs, they're open, but it's actually the driving schools that are administering the driving test there in the state of Texas. So maybe talk to them as well. James is here, Capitol Heights in Maryland. James, thank you for all your videos. I watched all of it after I took my exam, and thank God I passed. From Texas here, did parallel parking here as well. So, John, did you parallel park between cones, or did you parallel park on the street? Did they take you out for a driver's test? Joe, beautiful day here in Toronto, blue skies, 15 degrees Celsius, and no humidity. Joe, my mom was here a week ago. She flew back to Ontario, and I think she took all the sunshine with her there to Ontario because it's been raining here all week, and it hasn't been, we need the rain. I love the rain in the Okanagan because it's green and lush and beautiful, but and the province of Ontario is still closed. The MTOs, the Ministry of Transportation of Ontario, has not opened yet. They're not doing driver's tests there. No humidity. Joe is saying no humidity. For those of us from other parts of the world, in the United States and Canada, if you grew up in Ontario, in the summertime it's 36 degrees Celsius, which is about 95 degrees Fahrenheit, and it's 90% humidity. It's the humidity that gets most people in Ontario. And I just go back and, it's crazy. So John just answered my question about parallel parking, and he did parallel parking between cones. And for those of you watching now or watching on the replay, look down in the description. I have a link to a playlist that I've made for retesting, for closed circuit testing, and there is instructions for you to parallel park between cones. So there's a video there on that as well. Joe, we'll take your rain if you take our mugginess. Joe, I've been away from Ontario for a long time. I lived in Australia for 5 years, and I've been here in British Columbia since 2006. And in the summertime, I just go home and I sit in jeans when it's hot. It's 36 degrees Celsius and 90% humidity, and I go, finally, it's warm. Because, I mean, it's pleasant here, don't get me wrong, in the summertime, but it's not hot like it is in Ontario. So DC saying that there's information suggesting that Ontario, the province of Ontario here in Canada, is going to open up in June, or on June 22nd. And we're hoping that that's going to happen because, like California in the States, which is the most populated state, almost 40 million people live in the state of California. And, you know, if the state of California leaves this much longer, they're going to be more than 100,000 road tests in a backlog. And I just cannot fathom how they're going to take care of that backlog and how they're going to work through that to administer driver's tests for people. Okay, Jam, I mean, I watched all the videos before I took the exam. It was really helpful. Did the breathe in, breathe out technique, and that's really great. Yeah, and for those of you who are trying to get through with driving through to the DMV, to your test center in your area, you know, as one smart driver said here on the comments with the video, you're just going to have to breathe. You're going to have a lot of patience because it's going to take time for you to get through. It's going to take time for you to, you know, book your road test, your driver's test, however long it's going to take you to get in, and know that there's going to be modified road tests. These are going to be shorter. They're going to be modified. They're going to be in a parking lot, as one smart driver said, in the state of Georgia. As I said previously, the state of Georgia initially was going to move young drivers, new drivers, from the learner's phase of the GDL to the novice phase without a driver's test, and they've rescinded that, and now it's in the parking lot. And the driver who took the driver's test in the parking lot said had to back up through a cones on both sides, back up straight, parallel park, and 2-point reverse turn in with cones. So that's what they needed to do. So I've put those videos in that playlist, which you can find down in the description there. 2-point reverse 2-point reverse turn, backing up into a parking space between cones, parallel parking between cones, and the other exercises for beginner drivers that you should be doing in preparation for your driver's test, because most of you are going to be doing modified driver's tests with the examiner outside of the vehicle. So be prepared for that. Scary Healer, what are the rules for licenses coming up to expire if there's an extension? Yes, Healer, they're going to extend your license. They're not going to let it expire due to the backlog that they now have with these tests. And they're also going to extend it, and the backlog, those people who had their road test, driver's test canceled in March, April, and into May, you're going to be first on the list. So they're going to try and work through those backlogs. Winky, Kent County, Michigan. Hello there. Hey, Winky. In Michigan, in the state of Michigan, my understanding is that they're doing driver's tests. They're in the vehicle. You need to do the screening there, and you have to wear a mask for the duration of the driver's test. That's my understanding in Michigan. Again, even though they're open, even though they're administering driver's tests, it's going to be a huge backlog. All right, Catalina, I got your question here on left-hand turns. I'll go over that in just a moment here. Okay, just bear with me for a sec. And the other thing, Catalina, with the left-hand turns, go on here on the channel here and just type in left turns. There's a whole playlist on left-hand turns, and but I'll just quickly go over that for you. Okay, let's see what else we got here. State of California. Somebody asked me about the state of California. The state of California has not reopened yet. They are not doing driver's tests at this juncture. which is a little bit concerning because they have so many in the backlog, but they have not reopened yet as far as I know. Okay, Healer, any advice for drivers who are getting a license but don't have access to a car outside of the driving school? Healer, that, I get that question every now and again about not having access to a vehicle outside of that. It's tough, but somehow you need to get a vehicle. And, suggestions I have, grandparents, whether they have a vehicle, whether you have a neighbor who has a vehicle, even if they'll let you drive in the driveway or, take you down to a parking lot and help you out and those types of things. And, I'll put this out to smart drivers as well. Do you have any suggestions for people who don't have access to a vehicle to practice for their driver's test outside of a driving school? Because it's pretty tough. It's, as I say to people who are learning how to drive, unfortunately, this is not a spectator sport. You're not going to get enough practice just at a driving school. So do whatever you can to get some driving outside of the lessons that you're going to have with the driving school, whatever that is. So try and do that. Joe, Ontario started stage 2 reopening, small stores, but only in lower density areas, Kingston, North Bay, etc. In and around Toronto, Niagara, Windsor, we're still at stage 1, so June 22 is iffy. Yeah, it's still iffy, and there's all kinds of things. Catalina, okay, so left-hand turns, Minnesota, my understanding with Minnesota, they are doing tests, and just bear with me one sec, I'll have a look here, what I wrote. Minnesota, yeah, I don't have any information. They are opening Catalina as far as I know here. And they are administering driver's tests. They are at a reduced staff for whatever reason, what is going on there. And again, just be prepared, do the slow speed maneuvers, be ready for a closed circuit test there in the state of Minnesota, but they are, working through the backlog and that sort of thing. Okay, so left-hand turns in Minnesota. Catalina. So I'm going to talk about complex intersections and at complex intersections, you come up, there's probably going to be an advanced green where you stop and wait for traffic to clear. If you don't make it on the advanced green, put the front steer tires of your car on the front crosswalk line. And there's 2 schools of thought on this. Okay, there's my school of thought, which is you wait with the front steer tires on the front crosswalk line, and then you wait for the gap to come. When the gap presents itself, you drive into the intersection, meet the gap, and make your left-hand turn. You're going to start turning the steering wheel so there's 2 lanes at the complex intersection, for example. When you're at the dividing line, the white line between the 2 lanes of traffic, so you want to start turning the steering wheel 1 lane from where you're actually going to turn. Look at your landmark. At a complex intersection, it's going to be the concrete island in the middle between the 2 lanes, and often there's going to be a hazard obstruction sign there. It's the rectangular one. It's yellow and it's got the hash marks on it. And for that information about landmarks with turning, make sure you look at the video on lane positioning, and that'll help you out with that as well. And you look where you want to go, steer the vehicle, and when you make your left-hand turn on a complex intersection, multi-lane roads, make sure that you move over to the right immediately after making your left-hand turn, because you need to travel in the right-hand lane for the purposes of your driver's test. And the videos here, as I said, there's a whole playlist on left-hand turns that'll help you out with that, okay? And if you have any further questions, just let me know here and we'll help you out. Jonathan, hello my friend. Jonathan is in New York. I just have to take the combination test to get my Class A permit. The commercial driving school I went to is already starting the road tests. So the driver's test in the state of New York is only doing CDL licenses. They are not doing passenger vehicle licenses at this juncture. So that's what's happening in the state of California. Catalina, you're most welcome. And Jonathan says, that's awesome that you got some of that covered. And Princess says, how to not be heavy-footed. One of the ways not to be heavy-footed, Princess, is make sure that you have your heel of your foot on the floor of the vehicle, and then just use the ball of your foot to push on the throttle. The other thing that'll help you out with this, Princess, is to do some of the slow speed maneuver exercises. So just type in into the search here on the channel for beginners, and the playlist will come up for beginner drivers, and there's a bunch of exercises there to do in a parking lot. I would suggest that you practice a little bit in a parking lot just to get more control of the throttle and working that with the steering wheel and the brake as well, and that'll kind of help you out a little bit. Catalina, you're most welcome. You're most welcome. If you have any questions, leave me a comment down in the comment section. The other thing that I put down in the description there is the link to my website, and I've put a list of the states in the US and the provinces in Canada and what they're doing with the test center reopenings, what kind of tests they have. And again, if you have any comments at all or any information, just leave a comment down in the comment section there, and I'll collate all that information and put it over on the Smart Drive Test website for you. Epic, hello my friend. One concern I have about driver's tests in PA is there is a risk of drivers from high risk areas taking them in. Yeah, and that's for New Jersey, MVC might be chase car or normal test. Yeah, and this is another option that they have, and my understanding is that the state of Illinois is doing chase car tests, and this, what that means is you show up at the driver's test center, the DMV, with your mentor. The driving examiner will be in another vehicle with a driver, and they'll communicate with you via radio, and they'll take you around the test course, and they'll simply give you directions over a radio. It's very much like a motorcycle driver's test, where they simply follow you and they give you directions over the radio. Jaden, my friend Jaden, is in Florida. Hey Rick, it's me, Jaden. All the theme parks are going to be opening very soon in Florida. So Florida is beginning to reopen there, and they are doing driver's tests in the state of Florida, as far as my information goes, with what they're doing there as well. It's, as far as I know, it's simply screening in the state of Florida, and it can vary a little bit from county to county too in the United States. So make sure that you check your local DMV, try and get information from them with you. And I would suggest you not calling them, okay, because they're going to be overwhelmed and inundated with phone calls. I would suggest you just get in your vehicle, get on the bus, whatever you can do to just go down and talk to them in person and see whether you can book a driver's test. That's going to be your best bet. James, do you know if Marilyn has started taking road tests again? Just let me check what I have here on the information for Maryland. Yes. Okay. So in Maryland, James, in Maryland, they are doing driver's tests. It's a closed circuit test. And again, look at the playlist down in the description there, and it'll give you the how to parallel park between cones, how to back up in a straight line between cones, and how to do your 2-point reverse turn, because these are going to be the slow speed maneuvers that you're going to have to do with closed circuit testing in a parking lot with cones and the examiner outside of the vehicle. Okay, Joe says the province of Ontario here in Canada started stage 2 reopenings. Oh, okay, so we already did that. So we're thinking that the province of Ontario is going to be reopening as of the 22nd of June. John, is anyone taking their exam? They have to wear a mask while taking the driving exam and the examiner as well. Okay, excellent. Awesome. Jaden, I have a friend that's a firefighter, a fire chief, and he said, we will work out this siren once I go. Excellent. Awesome. Jonathan, they will not let you take any commercial road test if you show symptoms of COVID-19, and if you don't have your mask on, they take this very seriously. And this is, and just what Jonathan is saying, not just in the state of New York, but also in all of the United States and all of Canada. Know that if you are fortunate enough to get your driver's test, and they, regardless of whether you're doing a closed circuit test, anytime that you are in the building or you are dealing with personnel, government personnel, examiners and whatnot, they are going to do screening, and you are going to have to wear a mask. So make sure that you bring a mask if you are lucky enough to get your driver's test. They will not, and I repeat this again, they will not do a driver's test with you if you do not answer the questions, the screening questions about whether you have COVID-19 or not, and they will not go anywhere near you, or they will deny your road test if you do not show up with a mask. So make sure that you are prepared for that if and when you get your driver's test in this post-COVID-19 world. Just my mom, for example, will tell you this story. My mom flew out here and was out for about a month during May, and when she boarded the plane in Toronto to fly to Calgary, there was a gentleman there who would not answer the screening questions, and the flight personnel simply called security and they escorted him out of the airport. He could not get on the plane. So know that government personnel are going to deny you your road test if you don't answer the screening questions and you are not prepared with a mask. And if they are doing an in-vehicle test, that they're with you in the vehicle, they're going to disinfect the passenger seat. So know that as well, okay? Excellent. Joe, in April and May of 2019, MTO Service Ontario administered 143,000 road tests. Yes. By now, the COVID road test backing must be at least 100,000. That's just one province. Yeah, exactly, Joe. Same thing with here in the province of British Columbia, where I live. 7,500 road tests a week, and they've been closed for more than 3 months now. So we're fast approaching 100,000 driver's tests in the province of Ontario. So just imagine what some of the United States are, with the top 10 the top 10 states there comprising 2/3 of the American population. California, Texas, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Florida. We're talking 200 million people. How many road tests are we talking about? We're talking about hundreds of thousands of road tests, driver's tests that are in a backlog. And there's my friend Farron. How are you, my friend? Is it crazy there in South Africa as well in terms of driver's tests and whatnot? I'm sure, I don't know whether you have your finger on that kind of, whether you have much information or knowledge there about what's going on. Jaden, when I went to go to get my driver's handbook for the DMV in Charlotte County, we're talking in Florida. I'm not sure because its automatic doors are remaining closed for some reason. Yeah, and the doors are going to remain closed. That's the other thing about a lot of these DMVs in the States and here in Canada as well with the provinces. You're going to be by appointment only. You're probably going to have to wait outside until you're called, and you're only allowed in the building when you're called, because they're trying to keep control of the number of people and the density of people within the building. It's the same thing with restaurants and those types of things. They're only working at 1/3 capacity, so know that as well. Yeah, you might have some challenges, Jaden, because you need to know that if you're going to go down to the DMV, it needs to be for some sort of priority mission. Getting a book, they may deny you in the building. They may not do that for you. You may have to print it out online or study it online. Okay, excellent. Anna, I'm from Argentina. What's the difference between short white lines and long white lines? Both are not white straight lines. Don't know how to say it. Okay, Anna, I just want to clarify where you're finding the short white lines, because here in Canada, North America, short white lines are usually found on lanes that are merging out onto the highway. So we call them continuity lines, and the lane that you're in, if those continuity lines are on the left, it usually means that the lane you're in is either going to end or exit. But I would have to look that information up for you in Argentina there for you, Anna. Maybe just let me know where you found the short white lines, and I should be able to let you know whether that's true or not for where you live. Okay, so yes, Farron, I'm not sure about the situation here, but I assume it's bad because a lot of people applied for their driver's licenses. Yes, but the two types of short white lines, one is longer than the other. Okay, but where are the short white lines located on the roadway, Anna? That's what I need to know. Okay, so what else do we got? Excellent. Okay. What else we got here? All right, so the province of Arizona, or the state of Arizona, my apologies, you're not the United States. Excellent. Okay, so Arizona never closed, but of course it's a less populated state than other states and those types of things. But again, know that when you go in, you're going to have to answer the questions, you're going to have to wear a mask, and you're going to have to know what is on the driver's test. So that's the other thing too, and I've said this to you in the past, for those of you taking a driver's test, make sure you know what's on the driver's test and what is expected of you, because if you go in thinking that you're not going to have to do parallel parking, not going to have to do parallel parking between cones, this could sink you. Okay, so make sure that you're very clear about what is expected of you when you're on the when you're going in to do your driver's test, whether it's closed circuit, whether it's a chase vehicle, or whether uh, you know there's questions required, whether you're required to wear a mask and those types of things, because you don't want to be denied your driver's test when you show up, because they're going to be hurried as well, because obviously these places that are opening up are looking to clear the backlog as quickly as possible. Unfortunately, I don't think it's going to happen, because this COVID thing is kind of dragging on a little bit for some places. So we're really hoping that doesn't happen. But again, coming back to the number one reason why you're not going to be successful on your road test and why people aren't is because they don't know what to expect. They don't know that they have to know how to parallel park between cones. Parallel parking between cones is fairly simple. I mean, if you've practiced this a little bit and done that out on the roadways and whatnot behind another vehicle, parallel parking between cones is fairly straightforward, and there is a fair bit of latitude in the maneuver of parallel parking. But it's a little bit different when you're working with cones than it is parallel parking between another vehicle. And last week I put up a new video on parallel parking behind using a large vehicle. I borrowed my friend's Dodge Ram 2500 pickup truck, which is probably twice the size of the buggy, but there are more aids in a larger vehicle. For example, the new truck had a backup camera, and as well it's got huge mirrors that have convex mirrors on it. So there's ways to navigate and see into the bigger blind areas around bigger vehicles. So have a look at that as well. Okay, Patricia, how could they do modified road tests in a parking lot for G test? Isn't the whole purpose of them to demonstrate that you can drive on the highways? And yes, Patricia, I agree that there are limitations in terms of what they're testing for slow speed maneuvers and closed circuit parking lot tests, but at one and the same time, this is the option that they have available to them, and they are testing your skill level. What they're testing is that you have mastery of the primary controls, the brake, the throttle, and the steering wheel, and as well that you know where your vehicle is in space and place. And those are fundamental key skills. And as long as those skills are safe, as long as those skills are strong, you're probably going to do okay in traffic and those types of things. And they do know that you're working in, driving on roadways and those types of things. There are some limitations, obviously, but I still think that closed circuit testing is going to work, because it does demonstrate those fundamentals on the part of the driver. All right. Seems to get their license without taking a road test. From what I read, it created a storm of people opposing it. Yes, that's exactly. Okay. Yes, and what Jonathan and Farron are talking about is in the state of Georgia, they were going to move people initially in early May. They were going to move drivers in the GDL program from the novice phase from the learner's phase into the novice phase without a driver's test. And exactly what Jonathan said, they had a huge outcry opposing moving drivers to the novice phase without a driver's test. And there was a petition, there was public outcry, people fearing that these drivers would be let loose on the roadways and whatnot. I'm personally on board for it. I personally agree that drivers should be moved from the learner's phase into the novice phase without a driver's test, because it's not like we're setting them loose without any information. The last time that we didn't have a GDL program was in the late 1980s, so it's been a long time. It's been 3 or 4 decades. At that time, when we did not have a GDL program, young people and drivers did not have access to the information that they now have access to. Also, we did not have social media. Also, we did not have the huge amount of public awareness campaigns that we now have in terms of driving. And the number of young people who have got their driver's license and come on Smart Drive Test, the YouTube channel, and said, listen, I have my driver's license, but I'm still watching videos here, which to me suggests and says to me that young people are not just going out and driving their vehicles without some sort of information. They have a huge amount of information available to them that's going to help them to drive safely. They are very aware of the risks of distracted driving. They are very aware of the risks of drinking and driving. Now, I'm not going to say to you that it's not going to happen, that young people are going to take risks when they're driving, but they know about the dangers of driving a vehicle, and they know the inherent risks. They know the risks of driving and trying to text on your phone, which is one of the big challenges that we're having with traffic safety. I still think that the only way that these DMVs are going to deal with the backlog is to move new drivers from the learner's phase into the novice phase without a driver's test. But you can't do it without oversight. There needs to be some form of oversight. As long as there's oversight, I don't see a problem with moving them into the novice phase. And this fear is simply born out of what people think happened in the late 1980s. They're still in that mindset. They're not in the current mindset that young people have access to a lot of information, and as long as there's some sort of oversight, I don't think they're going to see a spike in crashes amongst young people. Okay? Dazar, is road test open in Connecticut? Let's see what's going on in Connecticut here. I have my list here. Connecticut. No, Connecticut is not open at this juncture. Connecticut is still closed, unfortunately. At least that's the latest information that I have. Some of the smart drivers or people watching on the replay may have different information about the state of Connecticut and what's going on. Okay? Farron says she recommends that people still get tested, or at least be tested later, or this legislation serves as a learner's permit. Jonathan, I said before, you have to wear a mask to the test center. Yes, otherwise you're going to be rescheduled for it. As for commercial vehicles used for road tests, they sanitize each test. Yes, they sanitize the seat and those types of things. Carry, even in regular cars, little round convex mirrors stuck onto the mirror of regular cars can help in 90 degrees back or parallel parking. Yes, you're absolutely right, Carrie. And I'll put the link for the convex mirrors down in the description there as well after I get done here. DC, have driving schools reopened in Alberta? I haven't had any lessons since March. DC, I haven't heard any information in Alberta. So if any of the smart drivers out there know what's going on in Alberta, in the province of Alberta here in Canada, leave us a comment down in the comment section there, and we'll definitely help you out with that. Okay? Jonathan says that he's seen people driving like they're on a NASCAR track over 100 miles an hour. And there has been a lot of media attention about that with people driving at very high rates of speed because of reduced traffic on roadways and whatnot. And I don't understand that. I mean, I understand it conceptually, but why people do that and why they think they can speed is beyond me. Anna, you want to know because you're moving to the state of North Carolina. Okay, now it makes sense. You saw them in the middle of the lane. Okay, so Anna, state of North Carolina there, the shorter lines, I think what you're talking about, correct me if I'm wrong, is that the shorter lines are twice as wide and half as long as the lane dividing markings. And those are continuity lines, usually getting out onto a freeway or an interstate. And what they mean is that the lane that you're in, if those shorter lines are on your left-hand side, the lane that you're in is either going to end or it's going to exit the interstate or freeway or highway, whatever you're on there. So that's what that is. Monica, no, California has not resumed testing as of this date. And that's the latest information that I have about the state of California. They're not doing that. Farron, they should drive only like a fully licensed driver. Okay, I missed some of the conversation here. Yes, and make sure that they're gonna, if you're not wearing a mask, as Jonathan says, when you show up for your driver's test, they are going to deny you your road test. So know that for the purposes of going in. If you're lucky enough to go in and have a driver's test, you're gonna have to bring a mask with you. And it doesn't have to be a medical mask, or it doesn't have to be one from a pharmacy. You can have a mask that somebody made at home. The only reason you're wearing a mask is to stop spittle and other wet particles coming out of your nose or your mouth and projecting onto somebody else. That's the purpose of the mask. Monica, you're most welcome. New Jersey and Pennsylvania. Let's see, Epic, what I got for Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania is closed circuit testing, and as far as I know, Epic, New Jersey isn't testing at this juncture. But in the state of Pennsylvania, it is a closed circuit test. Okay, Cougar, it's not going to happen in BC. The revision you suggest, I doubt it. The NDP are hostile to drivers. Yes, Cougar, I really doubt that a lot of places are going to move drivers from the learner's phase into the novice phase without a driver's test. There's simply too much opposition. However, I'm on board for it because I don't know how they're going to deal with the backlog any other way than simply moving drivers into the novice phase. Now, keep in mind that I am not just suggesting that they just move drivers into the novice phase. I'm suggesting that they move drivers into the novice phase with oversight, and that they bring the local driving schools on board, and the driver has to go in after 2 weeks or 3 weeks and have a driving test, a short driving test, 5 or 10 minutes with a driving instructor, and then again at 3 months, and then again at, say, a year, they have to have a 10-minute, 15-minute driving test with a local driving school, that they offload some of this work onto the local driving schools, and the driving schools submit a report to the authorities, or if they deem them a danger or those types of things, then they're moved back to the learner's phase. This is what I'm suggesting. And once they're in the novice phase, then they, most novice phase GDL programs and GLP here in Canada, it's 2 years at the novice phase, and once they get to the end, then they're going to have to do a full license test to move to a full license. So they are going to be tested. It's not like they're never going to be tested. They are. And as well, there's going to be some form of oversight. So this is the only way that I see them doing this. And this is where I see the mistake in Georgia is that there was some sort of oversight, because in the state of Georgia, they're required to do 40 or 50 hours of driving and sign an affidavit saying that they did that with their parents, and they could only be moved into the novice phase with their parents' signature on the piece of paper saying that they were moved into the novice phase. So all of these checks and balances and procedures would be in place, and this would begin to take care of some of the backlog. Okay. Monica, yes, your permits will be extended. If your permit's going to expire, yes, they are going to extend your permit. They're not going to just have it expire. Okay. So, and as well, the backlog will be taken care of first. This is what government authorities working at the DMVs and the test centers are going to do. Is they're going to do that first. Farron, the roads are so empty, so people think the law is above them. Where I live, the roads are packed with police officers patrolling. They will stop you and interrogate anyone if you have no mask. Yes. And the other thing my mom said to me was her vehicle was at the airport in London, Ontario, Canada here. And when she was driving home by herself, and my mom lives about 90 minutes from the airport. She was pulled over by a police officer in Ontario and questioned as to what she was doing out and where she was going. And she said, I'm driving home after coming off the plane. And that's what happened. So, yeah, as Farron says, there in South Africa, there's lots of police around. And the same as in the United States, other states and provinces here in Canada, that's what's going on. Cougar, there's going to be heat coming out of this backlog. They'll get a rude awakening. Cougar, they're going to have to do something. Because if government personnel think that they're simply going to work through the backlog and get people a driver's test in this post-COVID world, and that people are going to wait 18 months or 2 years to get a driver's test, that's absurd. That is just not a realistic expectation. And in some of the large metropolitan areas, in Chicago and New York City and Los Angeles and Houston and Dallas, those large metropolitan areas, people were already waiting a long time, 2-3 months in some cases, and in Canada the same. In Vancouver, 2-3 months for a driver's test. People are not going to wait 6 months, a year, 18 months, 2 years for a driver's test. Government personnel are going to have to make some tough choices about how they are going to deal with this backlog and how we're going to get these driver's tests back on track. Because the other thing about it is that people not having a driver's license affects our economy, because people need to drive themselves to work, they need to drive themselves to school, they need to, for recreational purposes, but to work and school, these are the big reasons that people are getting licenses. And if people are waiting, people are just how do they expect people to wait 18 months or 2 years for a driver's test? That's absurd thinking, and that's the reality of it. You know, the state of California, excuse me, the state of California or other places, if they think the people are just, you know, there's going to be outcry. People are, you know, write your politicians and say, tell them what you need to do, how this is going, how they're going to work through this backlog. No, Jonathan, not summer heat. He's talking about there's going to be public outcry about how long people are going to be waiting for a driver's test. Epic, I agree with your plan. Rick, some states like Pennsylvania do third-party testing. Wish that New Jersey MVC starts doing third-party road tests in order to clear the backlog. And yes, and here's the other reluctance to bring local driving schools on board. What has happened in the past is that this has been tried in other places where they gave authority to driving schools to administer driver's tests. And what happened is that a couple of people wrecked the system as per. They sold driver's licenses. So you came in, oh, give me $100 and I'll pass your driver's test. And unfortunately, a few bad apples this is what has happened. But I'm not sure about the states, but I know here in the province of British Columbia, we have driving school inspectors that work for ICBC. There's a half a dozen of them, and they police the private driving schools. If there are people who are policing the driving schools and can drop in at any time and inspect their records or watch what a driving instructor is doing with a student, then we have measures in place to protect from that. So there's no reason that we can't give that authority to local driving schools. If they're in good standing and they don't have any complaints from students and other businesses and personnel and whatnot, then there's no reason we can't give them that authority to administer driving tests to move people through this backlog and to get our DMVs back on track. This is what we need to do. And you know, if that's not a huge problem. Yes, there's always going to be people that are going to, you know, screw the system, so to speak. But we have measures in place. There are people who police these driving schools, so they can be brought on side and to help with this and, you know, fix this problem so we can start moving through. Farron, it was really nice here in May when my mom was here and, you know, sitting out on the deck and having meals and those types of things, but it's been really rainy for the last week or so. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, and yeah, Jonathan, it's going to be tough, and I don't know what they're going to do there in the state of New York because, you know, New York is a huge population, but I understand, you know, they had a very high number of COVID cases there in the state of New York. So anybody now watching on this or you're watching on the replay, leave us a comment down in the comment section there. Let us know, you know, what's going on in your state or your province and how we can help you out. With any information that you might need in terms of taking a driver's test, any information we can, you know, that you have about what's going on, what your driver's tests look like, and we'll do our best to get all of that there. And make sure you look down in the description there. It'll take you to the playlist. For those of you doing closed circuit testing, all of the maneuvers that you could possibly be asked for parallel parking, 2-point reverse turn, backing up along cones or through cones, those maneuvers there on the playlist, so look at that down in the description. And as well, the list for the states that are opening and what they're doing is also down in the description there, so have a look at that. Carrie, think legislatures need to make some decisions to get driver's tests back on track. Yeah, and Carrie, they're going to have to make some hard decisions because, you know, unfortunately, as we saw in the state of Georgia, there's a lot of pushback. People are afraid that if they let young people out, without a test, that there's going to be mass crashes on our roads and highways, and I don't think that's going to happen at all. As I said, we live in a very different world than we did in the late 1980s before they brought all these GDL programs in place. And as well, you know, there is information that circulates, you know, under the radar here amongst traffic safety specialists that these GDL programs aren't working anyway. But the government has a vested interest in them, and they continue to put forward that yes, they are reducing crashes amongst young people. And my professional opinion about that is that they're reducing crashes amongst young people because young people aren't getting their license when they're 16 or 17. young people, because of the GDL programs, have postponed getting their license until they're into their 20s. And because of that, that has brought down the number of crashes with young people. It has nothing to do with them driving and getting their license and that they're young and inexperienced. It has everything to do with the fact that young people are not getting their license until they're older. And that's why there's less crashes amongst young people. But that's my professional opinion. That's what's happening with the GDL programs and the GLP programs here in Canada. Farron, can't trust young people. Too funny. Jonathan, I plan to go to a DMV in Long Island that will go into phase 3 soon. It's already in phase 2, so I'm willing to travel to take the combination test. Yes. Dassar, while taking left or right turns, how to maintain the speed. Going on very low speeds, turning, I can't feel control of the vehicle if I turn the car in high speed. Yes, and Dassar, excellent question. Right turns, you should be kind of 8 to 12 miles an hour, and for left turns, it's going to vary a little bit, but you should be doing kind of 15 to 20, 22 miles an hour, depending on how big the intersection is, okay? And again, just go to the YouTube channel here and type in left turns, right turns, and there's a playlist for each one of those as well, okay? And just what Jonathan said, and here's another tip that I'll give you about driver's tests. You may have to travel to get a driver's test. You may need to go to a different county or a different place. And as Jonathan said, he's going to travel to Long Island there in New York to get his driver's test. So you may have to travel to get your driver's test. The other way maybe that potentially you could expedite your driver's test is going to a driving school, because know that driving schools get slots of time. So they have 4 road tests booked every week on Thursday from 2 to 5 p.m. So that potentially is another way that you could get a faster driver's test, is by going through a local driving school. And I know that that happens here in British Columbia where I live, that the driving schools have slots of time that is their slot of time every week. And if they can't fill those slots of time, they simply call in and say, listen, and then they put them out to the public. But that could be another option for getting a driver's test for you more quickly, is going through a driver's school. And of course, obviously there's a cost associated with that, because most driving schools are not going to just let you use their car. You have to come in and take a driving test for about an hour, and then if they deem that you're ready for your driver's test, then you go and book your driver's test and take it at the local driving school. But that's another way you potentially could do that. Excellent. Thank you so much for that compliment, Dazar. That's great. He says all your videos are inspiration to defensive driving. Brilliant. Thank you so much. Jonathan says, once I get my Class A permit, I'm going to the same commercial driving school where I got my Class B. I already have everything planned. Awesome, Jonathan. And the other thing I would suggest to you, Jonathan, if you're going to get a job working as a Class A driver, make sure that you start looking for a job right now. Start putting in your application, start calling trucking companies and those types of things, because they'll consider you, because, you know, it's not tough to get a job as a truck driver. You just need to put in the work. Farron, is also the case where you live that you cannot drive with someone beside you and you only have 2 people in the car, one driving, the other one in the back seat now due to coronavirus. Oh, wow, interesting. So they've put that measure in South Africa. I hadn't heard of that measure as of yet, that you can only have 2 people in the vehicle, one driver, and the other one has to be in the back seat. Wow, interesting. Joe, I agree. I'm teaching my son who's 28, and he is much less tempted to take reckless risks than he was when he was 16. Better for me too, as his teacher. Awesome. Thank you, Joe. Excellent. Okay. So Carrie says, yes, they need to make decisions, and they're going to need to make decisions about what's going to go on and how they're going to deal with this backlog for driver's tests. Because as I said, young people, new drivers, are not going to wait the length of time. You know, they're not going to wait 18 months or 2 years for a driver's test. So legislators, politicians are going to need to make tough calls and put in place ways that they're going to work through this backlog, and they're going to get this back on track, because 2 or 3 months was even unacceptable. And I talked to a truck driving school in the province of Ontario, probably 3 or 4 months ago, and they were already saying that this was the bottleneck in the system and getting people through and getting them a commercial license, was getting a road test at the MTO in the province of Ontario. So we need tough decisions, and the only way that I see that they can make those tough decisions and begin to deal with this backlog is by moving drivers into the novice phase from the learners phase, but with oversight. Okay, the local driving schools are brought on board, and they are helping to administer driver's tests, and they are providing reports to authorities, and they can work through the backlog, and then drivers are tested when they go from the novice phase or the probationary stage of their license in the GLP or the GDL, and into a full license, and they're tested at that juncture. Jonathan, when do you do the road test? I know the examiners usually sit next to you, but are they going to still sit next to you or in the back due to COVID-19 measures? Okay, so Jonathan, excellent. I'm glad you asked that, and I can clarify that for you. So are you asking me for CDL licenses, Jonathan, or are you asking me for passenger vehicles? Because some states and counties in the U.S. are administering driver's tests as usual. So the examiner is in the passenger seat beside you. You're both wearing masks. They do disinfect the seat as well when you come in and show up for your appointment for your driver's test. Some counties and DMVs in the United States are doing testing as usual, but they do the screening questions. They ask you those. Do you have a runny nose? Do you have a fever? Are you feeling sick? Have you been sick in the last couple of weeks? Have you flown? Have you been out of the country? And you have to answer all of those screening questions. Once you answer those screening questions and you do have your mask, then they're going to disinfect the seat next to you, and they're going to administer the driver's test. That's one way that the driver's tests are being done. And that's what's happening in Florida, in Arizona, and in Texas. And in Texas, the local driving schools are administering the driver's tests. And if you are successful in your driver's test with the local driving school in the state of Texas, then they mail the information into the DMV, and the DMV issues your license. The second way that they're administering driver's tests, and this is happening in the state of Georgia, in Pennsylvania, and other areas, is they're doing the closed circuit test, where it's just in a parking lot. The examiner is outside of the vehicle, and they're doing it with cones. And the one smart driver who talked about the state of Georgia, where they're doing closed circuit testing as well, you have to back up between cones in a straight line, and then you have to parallel park between cones, and then you have to do a 2-point reverse turn between cones. And all of that's available on the playlist. So that's the second way they're doing it. The state of Illinois and other places, the third option that they have for administering driver's tests in COVID-19 is that they're doing it with a chase car. So the examiner and driver sit in another vehicle, you with your mentor, and they communicate via radio, and they follow you around on a test circuit, and they give you instructions over the radio. So that's the third way that they're doing it. Okay? Jonathan, when you do the road test, I know that, okay, so school is open again, but only to grade 7 and grade 12 students. Is it the same there? I'll talk to that in just a second. Since I'm here in New York, I know they have to take measures. Yes. So, Jonathan, my understanding about, excuse me. Jonathan, my understanding about CDL licenses is that the examiner is getting in the vehicle with you. So, same measures. Show up, answer the screening questions. You have to wear a mask. Before they get in the vehicle with you, they're going to disinfect the seat. So that's my understanding of what they're doing with CDL licenses. If any smart drivers out there have different information about that or can help out, leave us a comment down in the comment section there, and I'll collate that information and put it on the Smart Drive Test website there, and I'll put a link down in the description for you. You can find that over there, and we'll get that collated as well. So what Farron is asking about school openings, my kids went back. The school year here ends at the end of this month in June, and so my kids went back to school only 2 days a week as opposed to 5 days a week, so they're only going part-time. So what they've done is they split up the classroom so that there are less students in the classroom. So they're only going to school 2 days a week, and they're only going to school for another 3 weeks. So that's what they've done here as opposed. Jasmine, how are you, my friend? Excellent. Okay, so that answers most of that, so I think we'll leave it there for today. And again, if you're watching on the replay, leave us a comment down in the comment section as to what's happening. Again, have a look down in the description there. You'll find the link for the playlist of slow speed maneuvers if they're doing closed circuit testing at your local DMV, and as well you'll find out what's going on with your test center if you head over to the Smart Drive Test website as well, and that'll give you the information you need. As well, leave us a comment, and we'll do what we can to help you get through this and get you a driver's test, and hopefully we can pressure politicians to reconsider moving drivers from the learner's phase into the novice phase without a driver's test, but with oversight as they're doing in the state of Wisconsin. The state of Wisconsin is the only state thus far that has done this. There was some information that was coming out from legislators that North Carolina was considering this as well, but I haven't heard any of that, and my information at this juncture, just let me have a look here. Where is it? North Carolina. I don't have any information about North Carolina, but for some reason I think that North Carolina is doing closed circuit testing. I'm not sure why I do that. Joe, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Joe says my videos are the best on the web, and I really appreciate that. And I'm beginning to reshoot some of my older videos, Joe, because I'm trying to get a better I had two thoughts there. One, I was thinking about cameras, and one, I was thinking about cars. And I need to get an updated vehicle, as you know, vehicles that have backup cameras and different secondary controls and those types of things. So that's the other thing that I'm working on as well. Joe says, why doesn't Ontario require G1 and G2 drivers to display L and N signs? You guys in BC are way ahead of us. You know, Joe, there's a lot of controversy about that. A lot of controversy. And it's the same thing in Australia. They have to display N's and L's as well. Actually, in Australia, I think it's a P. So the novice phase can also be called the probationary phase of your license. And, you know, there's two kind of thinking that if you display that on your vehicle, it makes you a target of road rage from other drivers and those types of things. You know, that's one thinking. The other thinking is that it helps out because it helps to be identified as a novice driver, and other people will be considerate and give you more space. But, you know, civil rights, those types of things, it's crazy where, you know, one province will require you to do something and another province will require you to do something else. So, you know, it's just unfortunately, this whole driving thing is very political, and the prime example of this is the state of Georgia and their move to waive the road test for those moving from learners into the novice phase, and the political backlash that they got for that, the pushback, and that they rescinded that because of political pressure. So, you know, that's the thing about driving and roads is very much a political hot potato. So this is, you know, reasons why things happen in one place and in another. And the other thing about driving that makes it incredibly difficult is that, you know, every state, every province has jurisdiction over driving the Highway Traffic Act and rules for new drivers getting a license. So that makes it complicated as well. You know, we just have this hodgepodge of, you know, rules and regulations and what people are doing to get people back for driver's tests and those types of things. Claudia, much love to you, Rick. Thanks for helpful greetings from Baltimore County. Awesome. Thank you so much, Claudia. Eric, thank you for all you do and your wisdom. Have a super day. How's your back doing? Yeah, Eric, it's not good. I'm heavily medicated, and I'm seeing the specialist next week. I'm probably going to have to go in for surgery. So, yeah, I'm not looking forward to surgery. But, yeah, it is what it is. But it's a lot better. It's, like I said, heavily medicated. It's helping with the pain a lot. Murr, hey, Rick, do you know any updates on how California behind the wheel is going to be like? Murr, nothing about California at this point. If anybody hears any information about what's going on in California, please let us know down in the comments there, and we'll definitely do what we can to help you out and get you going there. So, California at this juncture has not reopened. Connecticut has not reopened. The province of Ontario here in Canada has not reopened. So there are still states, provinces, and counties that have not reopened at this juncture. And, you know, the backlog is becoming just incredible. All right, so we'll leave it there for the day. All the best. And remember, pick the best answer, not necessarily the right answer. Have a great day. Bye now.